My name is Anif Sathi. I was born and raised in India, but have been living in Melbourne for the last 19 years. I've pretty much spent much of my life in Melbourne right now. I actually stood as an independent candidate in the last state elections. Since then, I actually have continued my advocacy for my area, which is Tarnait, pretty much focusing on the real needs of the residents living in the area and the lack of the funding which we get both at state and federal level. And that is one of the core problems which we actually have in Tarnet, that even for the very basic infrastructure, we got to fight for it. We got to actively advocate for it. I belong to Indian culture. Indian culture is pretty much one of the most accommodating culture in the world. We are pretty much diverse to the core, and we pretty much coexist with anyone and everyone. The entire world is one family. I came to Melbourne as an international student. Obviously, at that time, the education agents which were linked to the TAFEs and universities out here had a bigger footprint in India, and they obviously painted a rosy picture of, better job prospects. But once I did my studies out here, the basic reason I stayed back was actually the people and the lifestyle. Because during my initial years, I've seen an entire generation of elders who took pride in who they were, what they have built over the years. But personally, what I've felt over the last few years is we are pretty much competing against each other. Whether it's the skilled migrant versus a local resident versus an international student, just maybe because of sheer numbers, there's a sense of competition right now in society, right? That sense of competition was not really there 10 years back. That's just my personal observation. My entire immediate family lives in Tarnait, and living close to friends and family is always preferred. So I would actually agree that a lot of people moved into Tarnait, like myself, because it was projected to be an upcoming area. The reality matching up with the expectation was definitely there till the time I was living, in the inner western suburbs like Footscray, which was well connected, well established, had basic infrastructure in place. And when I was moving to Tarnet, I expected the same. And when I moved into Tarnet, there was this minimal infrastructure which was in place, but it was not at all catered for growth. So what we actually have seen is we have seen the population of Tarnet doubled in the last 4 years, and it will double in another 4 years. The infrastructure couldn't actually match up with the needs of the residents living in the area. The infrastructure gaps have increased so much that they really need some significant funding coming our way, coming to Tarnet, which unfortunately is not easy to get, especially when you are a safe labor seat. So we have got a Melbourne Metro Tunnel project, which is currently going on. The project will complete by 2027, and it will actually increase the carrying capacity of passengers by 27%. But the irony is, only in last 1 year in Thane, we have had 17% increase in the number of passengers using the Thane train station. A big significant project where billions of dollars actually have been spent, can only cater for our current need. So when it will get delivered in 2027, it would be out of date by those standards or by population number at the time, which to me is not really a good planning. Look, if I would have the time now, I would definitely move to Melbourne because I love Melbourne. Melbourne is a great city, but I would move to an area which already has basic infrastructure in place. Simply assuming that the infrastructure will be continuously upgraded in a growth area to cope up with the population growth is just not real. Now, a lot many times I get asked, if that's the case, why don't you move out from Tarnet now? And the simple answer to that is, how many areas do you want me to move? Right? I live in an area, I call that area my home, and I advocate for that area to be better. It's as simple as that. The lack of transport infrastructure is the single biggest issue in Tarnet right now. As per Wyndham Council, we have got the largest proportion of people in Victoria who spend 2 hours or more commuting to and from work. So basically, poor public transport and road congestion is what we struggle on daily basis. We actually are a community of, of extended families. We actually live with our parents, things on those lines. It is actually also our elders who actually need to walk to the nearest supermarkets. We actually even have to walk another, 1.5 to 2 kilometers just to get to the nearest train station. Socialization between elders of the same community, is always a challenge, especially when you actually have got a poor transport. If I've got an elder, in my family, they're actually new to this place, and for those elders to move around freely, not reliant on the family members to come, pick and drop, take them to the nearest service stations, pick them to the nearest community center, all of that becomes an issue for first generation families, especially living with elders in our community. The next part is, like, let's say, lack of car parks at Thane train station. That is a major challenge. The car park is usually full by 7:30 in the morning, and people or residents have got very little option to park at spots where they risk heavy fines. The only way to avoid that is rely on bus services. By the way, to get to public transport, you need to actually have a bus, walk to the nearest bus station, then hop onto a bus, and then reach the Thane train station, and then you actually have to get the V line. Residents often complain of being pegged like sardines, and especially when the trains run with reduced carriages, it adds to the chaos. There's so much stress which they are already into even before starting their day. But if you choose not to do that and you choose to travel by the roads are congested to the core. Now, what actually has happened is time spent on the freeway is still pretty much the same as it used to be, but the time which I spend, connecting to the freeway or reaching to the freeway entry is a lot more. It is just a lot of unwanted time to commute, a time that I would prefer to spend with my family rather than spending on travel. Wyndham, or Thane specifically, is made up of a lot of young families. This section of society really needs transport to be in place to do the basic things of their life. The next part which I would like to touch on is actually health and education, because I consider health and education as one of the core areas of supporting infrastructure which you need in a society or in a community, and which we really lack in Thane. Werribee Mercy is the only hospital in the area. A newspaper article, mentioned that Werribee Mercy's ability to deal with local health needs is only 33%. Imagine what it would be when Thane population doubles, in under 4 to 5 years. They do a bloody fantastic job based on the resources which they actually have got. But if they don't get the funding which they need, we are stuck with poor health services. So basically, in a nutshell, we have got a health hospital where we need funding in order to cope with the population growth in the area. The other basic challenge which we have got is lack of schools. The housing estates in the area are built before primary and secondary schools are put in the place. Due to this, the existing schools are overcrowded. The current benchmark is that for every 3,000 dwellings, you need one primary school, and every 9,000 dwellings, you need one secondary school. We fall short of all of these benchmarks in Thane. So basically, if I combine all three, we need 3 schools, 2 primary schools, and 1 secondary schools in Thane by 2023, which, based on current pace of development, is just not possible. Because very recently, we got a school, which was Davis Creek Primary School. It took 4.5 years to get 1 primary school in Thane. So at the end of the day, the reality is our children will miss out on quality education. I could really see Thane becoming a modern slum in the next decade if the infrastructure issues are not addressed now. The most pressing issue in Thane, people first and infrastructure later. And especially when we have seen a continued growth in population, and we expect Thane to double in numbers by 2027, this concept of people first and infrastructure later will not work for us. In 2016, $1.8 billion of Western Road upgrade was announced, which included Thane in duplication of some of the key roads. and this project will finish by 2022. It is great, except the fact that TANET has doubled in size in the last 4 years, or the current development which is actually happening caters for a TANET of like last 4 years or even before that. Look, in terms of migration policy, what I do understand is that skilled migrants fill up the job gaps in the work sector. There are times when migrants are seen as taking jobs from the local people. From my perspective, and look, I share the same perspective with a lot of, Indian community people I meet with, that I think it should be quality over quantity, when it comes to migration. Striking the right balance by increasing local jobs, focusing on local skilled workers, and then filling the gaps by skilled migration, that would be the right approach. Skilled migration comes later. We have actually witnessed local industries, including manufacturing, getting downsized or even closed in winter. That has a direct impact on local jobs and on local residents. Proper consultation means no one is left behind. I actually believe, there's a good amount of funding that can actually be repurposed for better town planning. And it will save funds going on to education, training, local businesses, creating more job opportunities.